Welcome to our demonstration of RCReports. I'm Paul Hammond. I'm president and founder of RCReports, and my expertise is in reasonable compensation for small business owners. There's a few other people I'd like to make you aware of. This is Jack Selesky, and he is our VP of Education. And Jack is an expert on how reasonable compensation applies to tax and business situations. Next up is Bill Schneider, one of the smartest people I've ever met. Bill is our mathematician statistician, and he heads up our proprietary wage database. And this is Richard Perry. We love Richard around here. He is our chief programmer and head nerd, as he likes to be referred to. He's very fond of a quote by Albert Einstein that reads, "Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler." Richard works very hard to make sure RCReports is simple and intuitive to use. And last but not least is Molly St. Dennis. Molly heads up customer support and experience. If you have any additional questions or you'd like some one-on-one training, you can reach out to Molly or someone on her team. If you're not already familiar with RCReports, our software will determine reasonable compensation for small business owners. It was built as a tool for CPAs, EAs, tax, and financial advisors to use when they need to determine reasonable compensation figure for a client. We strongly discourage its use by small business owners directly because knowing a reasonable compensation figure is only half the equation. Putting it into context of the tax or business situation is what they need their trusted advisor for. RCReports was built around IRS criteria and guidelines and court rulings. It will deliver an unbiased reasonable compensation figure, and this is key if it's going to be defensible in an IRS examination and defendable in court. We have an excellent track record, and you can see more about that from our home pages. Here's what you'll love about RCReports. Our results are available immediately. Either you or your client walks through a short online interview. At the end of that interview, you'll have your reasonable compensation figure and report. There's a 30-day edit period. This will give you and your client time to go over the report and make any needed changes. It was designed for firm-wide use. You only need one account for your practice, and you can add as many additional users as you'd like. And you get access to our exclusive database of wages. Our wage database is about 3.5 times larger than anything else you'll find. Savvy advisors are using RCReports for practice development, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And last and most importantly, RCReports is trusted. Let's take a quick look at our agenda. We're going to help you choose the right report for your need. We'll show you how to initiate a report for a client, how to complete the online interview, and then go in and edit those results if needed. We'll show you how to master the RCReports dashboard. And last, we'll go through some pricing strategies and talk more about how some of your colleagues are using RCReports for practice development. Let's begin our demonstration of RCReports, and the first thing you need to know is where you can find us. RCReports is located at www.rcreports.com or reasonablecompensationreports.com. Either one will get you to our homepage. I'm not going to spend any time on the public side of our website. You can return here and surf these pages when it's convenient for you. To get started with RCReports, the first thing we need you to do is to create an account by registering. Registering with RCReports comes without cost or commitment. All new accounts start out on our pay-as-you-go platform, also known as our starter plan. From there, you can take a look at one of our 2 annual unlimited subscriptions and see if they fit your need better. I mentioned a little earlier that we strongly discourage small business owners from using our site directly. We had so many small business owners hitting our site and contacting us that we created the RCReports referral network, and this is where we can send clients your direction. Small business owners can come in here and find a tax or financial advisor in their area to help with their reasonable compensation issue. I'll show you a little later in the webinar where you can opt into the referral network once you're comfortable using RCReports. To register with RCReports, confirm that you're a tax or financial advisor and enter your firm's name. We'll double check and make sure your firm isn't already registered. You only need one account for your entire firm. You can add as many additional users as you need to. We'll gather a little bit more information from you, and then we will email you a temporary password. Once you've received your temporary password in your email, come back to rcreports.com. In the upper right-hand corner, click on Registered User Login. Enter your email address, your temporary password, and log in. You are now logged into your RC Reports dashboard, and you are looking at the account of Sam Miller of Miller & Associates, and this is my demonstration account. And the first thing I'd like you to do after you create an RC Reports account is come down to the My Profile tab and change the temporary password to one of your own. We designed RC Reports to be client-centric. What I mean by that is most of the time spent logged into your RC Reports dashboard will be here in the Clients tab. Sam Miller of Miller & Associates is a very well-used account. We have a couple of dozen clients in here and hundreds of reports have been run. I'm going to close the profile of Sam Miller, and I'm going to bring up the profile of a new user. This is the account of Karen Green. And Karen is brand new to RC Reports, and she's an additional user of Miller & Associates. And like all new users to RC Reports, her dashboard is empty. The best way to get to know how RC Reports works is to add a client. Adding a client does not initiate or commit to a reasonable compensation report. It simply adds the information in that RC Reports requires to create a report. I recommend, when you're beginning with RC Reports, to add in a John Doe or a Jane Doe, or put yourself in as a test account. It's nice to have a profile that you can play around with and test out different scenarios. I'm going to go ahead and add Jane Doe as a new client. And Jane's business is Jane's Donuts. Your client's first name, last name, and business name are the only required fields. Email address and phone is for your convenience. If you add a client email, you will be able to use the RC Reports system emails to send automated emails to your client, such as links to the client interview or the finished report. At RC Reports, we take your privacy and your client's privacy seriously. We do not contact your clients in any way. Once you've added your client's first name, last name, and business name, and any additional information you'd like to, create their profile. Once you've created a client profile, you're now ready to initiate reports. I'm going to close Karen's profile, and I'm going to bring the profile of Sam Miller back up for the remainder of the demonstration. Now that we have our dashboard filled with clients, we're ready to run a report. I'm going to select my client, Scott Stone. Some of you may recognize that name. Scott is my test subject in our S-Corp report, and we want to run a report for Scott. So now we can click on Initiate a Report, and it'll bring up our current report offerings, and we have 3 of them. You can click on the little blue information icon for more information. The first report is our S-Corp report, and it is designed specifically to address the IRS requirement that shareholder employees of S-Corps pay themselves reasonable compensation. The report is built around IRS guidelines and court cases that address this issue. The next report addresses normalizing reasonable compensation for valuation and appraisals. As part of the valuation process, CPAs will typically normalize the owner's salary as part of the overall valuation report. The third report we call Trusted Advisor. It's also known as our universal or generic report. This report can address any issue where you need to determine a reasonable compensation figure for a small business owner or key manager. It can be used for issues such as guaranteed payment, reasonable compensation for C-Corps, succession planning, estate planning, and a whole host of other needs. Each report is written to a specific issue, so that when they are presented to your client or someone in a position of authority, such as an examiner, judge, or opposing counsel, the report will address the issue at hand and include details from the client interview, a synopsis of the methodology used, and additional supporting material. We're going to run an S-Corp report for Scott. Once you've selected your report type, then you need to choose your time frame, and you can run a report all the way back through 2001. We're going to go ahead and run a current report for Scott. Once you have selected your report type and time frame, you next need to decide whether you want to display the report results to your client upon completion of the interview, and this is a premium feature. If you select yes, your client will see the report results upon completion. If you select no, the interview will close at the end without displaying the report results. To build value with their clients, a lot of advisors prefer to look over the interview and report prior to having their client see it for the first time. That way they can review it, discuss it, and make any needed changes before sharing the report with their client. Once you've chosen your options, you can click on Initiate Report. As you can see, our chief programmer, Richard Perry, has a little bit of a sense of humor and is a Star Trek fan. So yes, we're going to confirm that we want to run the report. So we'll choose yes, make it so. After initiating a report, the next step is completing the online interview. The online interview takes somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 minutes. And there are a few different ways to conduct the interview. The first is to click on the Begin Work on this report, and the interview will open on your screen. A good option if you'll be entering the information for a client or conducting the interview in your office. Send Interview link will send an email invitation to your client, and they can complete the online interview when it's convenient for them. You can send a custom invitation to your client by copying the report link and pasting it into your own email. Or use our automated email invitation. It will appear as if it came from you, and it looks like this. You or your clients are now ready to complete the online interview. Next, let's take a look at the online interview. Let me begin by mentioning that the interview software is not designed for multiple simultaneous users. In other words, you don't want to be working through the online interview on your computer while your client is back at their office with the online interview open on their computer. If you want to work through the online interview with your client, I'd recommend that you either have them in your office or use some very simple screen sharing software such as JoinMe or GoToMeeting. I also want to point out that because Miller & Associates is a premium subscriber, they have the option of branding the online interview and final reports with their logo instead of RCReports. This is the landing page for the online interview, and it includes step-by-step instructions on how to complete the interview, and there are 7 of them. There's some additional tips and information to help your client complete the online interview, and there's an online tutorial. But to begin the online interview, simply click Get Started. RCReports uses a recognized method of determining reasonable compensation known as the replacement cost approach, sometimes referred to as the many hats approach. One of the assumptions of this approach is that small businesses hire from their community. So the first thing we need to do is drill down to where Scott's business is located. And Scott's business is in Chicago, Illinois. So the first thing we're going to do is select the state of Illinois, and we're going to confirm that answer. And because RCReports operates in the cloud, you need to confirm each answer. Each time you confirm an answer, it's saved back on our server. If at any point in time you leave the interview, it'll remember where you were, and when you bring the interview back up, it'll continue where you left off. Since Scott is in Chicago, Illinois, we'll choose Cook County, and again confirm that answer. The third step of the interview is called My Company. In this section, we're going to gather a little bit more information about Scott and his company. Scott has some college but no degree, 6 employees. His annual revenues are between $250,000 and $500,000. and his business assets are between $100K and $250K. Scott is the only shareholder of his S Corp. And the final question is, how many hours per week does Scott work? And like most S Corp owners, Scott works more than 40 hours a week. However, we cap hours at 40, and this is due to a recent court case known as McAlry. If you need to run an S Corp report for more than 40 hours per week, you can use the Trusted Advisor or Universal Report. We do not cap hours in the Trusted Advisor report or in the Normalizing Compensation for Valuations report. It's worth pointing out that you don't have to set your hours at 40 plus. If a small business owner works less than 40 hours a week, set the hours to the appropriate number. But since Scott works 40 hours plus, we'll take it up to 40, and we'll click on Save and Continue. The next step of the interview is called Standard Tasks. When we developed RCReports, we studied small businesses, and we found that most small business owners perform tasks in 8 different categories. And those categories are lined up here on the left: maintenance, administrative, marketing, all the way through management. In this section of the interview, what we ask of Scott is to go through each tab and simply select any tasks that he performs regularly for his business. Scott spends some time each weekend making sure his office and maintenance facility are clean and tidy. Under administrative, Scott has some help in the office, answering phones and scheduling, but anytime there's a customer service issue or complaint, Scott deals with that personally. Advertising, sales, and marketing. Like most small businesses, Scott's the primary salesperson for his company, so he'll select sales representatives. Accounting, financing, and bookkeeping. Scott does his own bookkeeping and payroll. Under Human Resources, Scott reads through the description. And the only one that fits in here for him is Human Resource Clerk. In a nutshell, this is basic record keeping on employees. Computer and Information Technology, Scott does not perform any tasks. Purchasing and Inventory, Scott makes sure that all his jobs have the needed materials. And the final category here is Management. This is our most comprehensive category. And what I'd like to point out here, especially in management, is that you and your clients read through the descriptions. We do not include CEO in this section. When you read the description of a CEO, it simply does not apply to small businesses. For most small businesses, Business Office Manager is probably the most accurate. When advising your client on reasonable compensation, this is a section where you can hopefully help them pull the ego out of their reasonable compensation. For this report, I'm going to choose both General and Operations Manager and Business Office Manager. I want to compare and contrast these two tasks against one another in the final report. We'll click on Summary. It'll give an overview of Scott's answers, and then we're going to continue the interview. The next step in the interview is called My Tasks, and this is where Scott can add tasks specific to his business that we didn't cover in the standard 8 categories we just finished. Scott's business is concrete flat work, such as concrete sidewalks, patios, and driveways. So the first thing we need to do is add in concrete finisher for Scott. And we can use the keyword lookup, type in concrete and search, and it will pull up any job title with the word concrete. And we're going to select concrete finisher. We're going to double check the description and we're going to add it to Scott's profile. And Scott can add as many additional tasks in here as he needs to completely account for all the different tasks he performs for his company. You can also use the alpha tabs on the left. And one of the other tasks that Scott performs for his business regularly is maintenance on his machinery. So let's go ahead and add maintenance workers, machinery, take a look at the description, and add it to his profile. This is also the section of the interview, if you did want to add CEO, that you could add it. Once Scott's completely accounted for all the tasks he performs for his company, he's going to click on Continue the Interview. The next step of the interview, Scott needs to apportion his time among all the different categories he performs tasks. Scott can roll over the magnifying glass as a reminder of the tasks he's chosen, and he simply apportions his time by each category. Scott spends a little bit of time each weekend making sure his facilities are clean and neat. He takes care of all customer service issues, but there's not that many of them, so he'll move that up to 2%. The next category is advertising, sales, and marketing, and Scott spends quite a bit of time out signing up business and new clients. We'll take that up to 10%. Bookkeeping and payroll, Scott again spends quite a bit of time in that category. We'll also put that at 10%. If you remember, human resource clerk is basic record keeping on his employees. Scott spends very little time on that, 1%. Purchasing clerk, making sure he has what he needs on each job. He estimates that at 3%. And in management, we selected both GM and office manager. Scott spends quite a bit of time managing his company, and we'll take that up to 22%, and the remainder of his time in concrete finisher and maintaining his equipment, and we'll go ahead and take that up to the remaining 50%. Once Scott's accounted for all of his time, we'll give a recap, save and continue. We are now in the last step of the interview. In this section, we ask Scott to rate his proficiency for all the tasks he's chosen, and in any category where he's chosen more than one task, to go ahead and apportion his time within that category only. We'll start here under maintenance. Scott's going to rate himself as average. Customer service rep, he's also going to leave it average. But as a sales rep, Scott believes he does a little bit better job than most others, so he's going to take that up to above average. Under accounting, financing, and bookkeeping, since Scott selected 2 tasks in here, he's going to need to apportion his time among both, and he's going to split it evenly, about 50-50. And Scott believes that he does an above average job in both bookkeeping and in payroll. Under human resources clerk, which is basic record keeping, he's the first to admit he doesn't do a very good job at that. He'll take it down to low. He'll leave purchasing clerk at average. Now, under management, most small business owners will select only one. You can select as many as you'd like, but generally speaking, most business owners will find one that fits best. But to compare and contrast the difference between a general and operations manager and a business office manager, I'm going to select high proficiency for both of these, and I'm going to split them 50-50. And then we'll compare and contrast these in the final report. And then we'll come back and we'll edit these and make them a little bit more accurate for Scott's business. And the final category is my business, concrete finisher, and maintenance and machinery repair. Scott actually spends more time repairing his equipment than he does finishing concrete. His employees are mainly out finishing concrete. And Scott's going to rate himself high in both of these categories, and rightfully so. He's very good at both of them. Save and continue. At this point in time, the required portion of the interview is complete. When Scott clicks on continue, he'll come to a section that is optional. The questions in this section will map back to the advisor worksheet, and we'll talk a little bit more about the advisor's worksheet in a little bit. When Scott clicks on Save and Continue here, the interview will show as complete because we selected to not display the report results to Scott at the completion of the online interview. If we would have selected yes, Scott will now be able to see his reasonable compensation figure and the accompanying report. At the point in time the interview is complete, RC Reports will send an email to Sam Miller and let him know that his client, Scott Stone, had completed the online interview. That email will look like this. Next, let's go back to Sam Miller's dashboard and take a look at the final report. After Sam receives the email from RC Reports letting him know that his client, Scott Stone, has completed the online interview, Sam will log back into his dashboard and he will navigate back to Scott Stone's profile. And you'll notice here that the interview will be tagged as complete. And for the first time we can pull up View Print Report and take a look at Scott's reasonable compensation figure. Scott's reasonable compensation figure is $97,082. And what Sam is going to do here is he's going to scroll through the report and he's going to take a look at Scott's answers. I mentioned when we were going through the online interview that I wanted to compare and contrast General and Operations Manager with Business Office Manager. And as you can see, there's a pretty wide gap between the hourly wage of a GM and a Business Office Manager, and we're also looking at a high proficiency rate. When we go in and make an edit, we'll go ahead and choose a management task that's more appropriate to Scott's business. The other thing that Sam is going to notice here is that Scott's rated himself above average as bookkeeper and payroll clerk. Sam's been Scott's accountant for a very long time, and although they get along very well, Scott is anything but above average in bookkeeping and payroll. As a matter of fact, Sam would very much like to get Scott to stop doing his own bookkeeping and payroll and let Miller and Associates take it over. One of the sections that Sam will go in and edit is the proficiency rating for bookkeeper and payroll. Sam will go ahead and scroll through the remainder of the report. All the pages from this point on contain standard language, and at the end of the report there are some sample minutes for Scott to add this to his corporate minutes. It's a very good extra step and will add an added layer of defensibility to the reasonable compensation report once it's finalized. You may also have noticed that the report is stamped with a draft watermark. The draft watermark will be removed when the report is finalized, either at the end of the 30-day edit period, or you can go in and manually finalize it before then. So let's go back to Sam Miller's dashboard, go back to the options drop-down. Now let's go ahead and edit the report interview by clicking Edit Interview. When the report interview opens back up, you'll notice that the tabs along the top are live except for the location. RC Reports has more than 3.5 million pieces of wage data. Once the location is set, only the wage data for that location is loaded in and cannot be edited. Sam will navigate back to the point in the interview that he wants to make changes, and we're going to start by selecting an appropriate management task for Scott. Go back to Management, and after looking at the description, Business Office Manager is a much better category than GM, so we're going to go ahead and remove General and Operations Manager, and then we're going to save and continue the interview. Anytime you make an edit to the online interview, you need to save and continue all the way through to the end, or your changes won't be saved. We don't have any changes to the My Tasks section, so we'll click on Continue. However, since we removed GM From the standard tasks, we now have a hole in the amount of time apportioned. So RCReports went ahead and set management back to 0% since we removed a task in there, and the only task remaining now is Business Office Manager. The amount of time Scott spends in that category hasn't changed, so we'll take it back up to 22%. Save and continue. And the other two edits that Sam wants to make in Scott's profile are in proficiency ratings. So the first one is going to be in accounting, financing, and bookkeeping. Sam's going to take the proficiency rating from above average down to below average. For both of these, truth be told, it should be low, but he doesn't want to hurt Scott's feelings, and there's not that big a difference between low and below average in the wage. And then last, in management, we're going to go ahead and move Scott's proficiency down to average. The best advice I can give on choosing the right proficiency is this. Whatever task you're talking about, in this case Business Office Manager, ask your client to put themselves in a room of 100 of their peers and then rate their proficiency against those peers. If your client believes they're in the top 10%, select high, and the bottom 10%, select low. If they're right in the middle, average. If they're slightly below average or slightly above average, select the appropriate proficiency rating. This is another way to help get your client's ego removed from their reasonable compensation figure. Save and continue. Continue the interview. Again, this section is optional and will map back to the advisor's worksheet. Save and continue. And because we selected not to share the results with Scott, the end of the interview will never show a completed report. I'm going to go ahead and close down the interview. We're going to come back to Sam's dashboard, and now we're going to open up the report for a second time. And now we're going to have an adjusted reasonable compensation figure for Scott Stone. Scott's adjusted reasonable compensation figure is $72,906. I left the original report open, which was $97,082. You can see by choosing the correct management category and by changing the proficiency in bookkeeping, which is a much minor change, it significantly changed Scott's reasonable compensation figure. At this point in time, Sam is now ready to share the results of the reasonable compensation interview with his client, and we'll take a look at that next. Now that Sam's comfortable with the reasonable compensation report, he is ready to share the results with Scott. He'll navigate back to the report, click on the options drop-down, and he'll click on Send Report Link. Send a Report Link will send a PDF copy of the report to Scott, and this works very similar to sending an interview link. And we'll go ahead and use the RCReports automated email. Scott will be able to open it. Sam and Scott can get on the phone, talk a little bit about it, see if there are any other changes that need to be made before the report finalizes. Next, let's take a look at some of the options we haven't seen yet, and those options will vary depending on what stage the report is in. Reports are generally in one of three states: initiated but not yet complete, completed but not yet finalized, and reports that have been finalized and locked. Let's take a look at a report that's been finalized and locked. The report options include the advisor worksheet, and we'll take a more in-depth look at that in just a minute. You can send a report link to your client at any point in time, and they can pull that PDF report up. You can send it today, you can send it 3 years from now. View Print Report will just pull up a PDF copy on your screen. And the last option is called View Log. View Log will display an activity log for the report, including the day it was initiated, when you sent an email link, when the report was completed, and when it was locked. Next, let's take a look at options for reports that have been started but are not yet complete. The only option we haven't seen yet in here is cancel interview. You can cancel or delete a report as long as it hasn't been completed. Once a report has been completed, it cannot be deleted. And we'll go ahead and choose no thanks. And last, let's take a look at the options for a report that's been completed but has not yet been finalized. By default, reports are finalized after 30 days and the draft stamp is removed. If you'd like to finalize a report and remove the draft stamp prior to 30 days, you can manually lock the report using this option. Manually locking the report cannot be undone. And again, we'll choose no thanks. The only option we haven't taken a look at yet is the advisor worksheet. So let's go ahead and bring up the advisor worksheet and take a look at it. And this is where you can manually make adjustments to the reasonable compensation figure and add additional information and notes to the report. For the overwhelming majority of your clients, these questions won't apply. What is important is that you have considered them. That way, in a few years, if a reasonable compensation challenge or court action arises, you can say, yes, I did consider internal consistency, similar salaries, what other employees in the business are making. I also considered past salaries. If this is an S-Corp owner who just started his business, sometimes that's applicable. Industry standard, there's a manual override. But one of the ones that's helpful for the S-Corp report is annual distributions. If you have questions on some of these adjustments, we do a class on reasonable compensation for S-Corps. It's available as a self-study through CPA Academy, and we offer it live on a regular basis as well. If you'll remember, the IRS guidelines on reasonable compensation for S-Corps state that the amount of reasonable compensation will never exceed the amount received by the shareholder either directly or indirectly. In this case, if Scott is planning on taking a distribution of $100,000 before considering his reasonable compensation, we can put that in here and hit enter. And that'll tell us that Scott's reasonable compensation for this year should be $72,906. And he can take out the rest as a distribution. When this is helpful is when a distribution is lower than the reasonable compensation figure. Let's change it to $50,000. And now you can see that Scott's reasonable compensation has been adjusted down to $50,000. His replacement cost, or his fair market value for the services he provided his company, hasn't changed. That's still $72,906. But again, the IRS guidelines state the amount of reasonable compensation will never exceed the amount received by the shareholder. Since Scott has only taken a distribution of $50,000, his reasonable comp will drop to $50,000. He's not required to pay himself the entire $72,906. For the last question, I'm going to change this back to $100,000. Quite frequently we get a question about single shareholder S-Corps. And the last question addresses this. If you have a single shareholder S-Corp, where the shareholder employee only performs services, and they believe there is no replacement for him or herself, the work they do is unique, every dollar coming into the company is a result of their service, there's no enterprise, goodwill, etc., it's very difficult to argue that the reasonable compensation figure should be anything other than the distribution amount. When you click yes here, the reasonable compensation figure will be changed to the total distribution amount. Since Scott has employees and equipment working for him, we're going to change that back to no, and his reasonable compensation will stay at $72,906. And finally, we have a notes section. You can add notes in here. Even if you don't make any changes in the advisor worksheet, you may still want to add some notes in here to go along with the reasonable compensation report. A rule of thumb, the bigger adjustment you make, the more you should write about it and the more detail you should include, especially if you're using the manual override. Let's go back to our dashboard. Now let's finish our look at the Clients tab. We're still here in Clients. We're still in the profile of Scott Stone. And there's a few additional features in here. You can click on the mail icon and this will open up an email to your client. The wrench icon to the right of your client's name will open up their profile, and this is where you can edit their business name, email, and phone number. You can also archive a client. Archiving a client does not delete any information. It simply removes them from your current client list. It's a way of keeping your dashboard organized. We just archived Scott Stone. When we go back to our client list, Scott Stone no longer is listed. You can see all your archived clients in the Archive tab, and you can re-archive them just as easily as you archived them. And there's Scott. We designed RCReports for firm-wide use. On a user-by-user basis, you can decide if you want to share clients. On the Show Shared Clients tab, you'll see the other users of Miller & Associates, Preston, Karen, Connie, and you can open up their profile and take a look at the reports available. That finishes our look at the Clients tab. Let's look at the Reports tab next. The Reports tab is a simple way to find and view reports without opening a client's profile. Active reports are reports within the 30-day edit period or have not yet been completed. And report history is a chronological listing of all reports, regardless of their status. Next, let's take a look at the Administration tab. By default, the person that registers and creates the account with RCReports will be the primary administrator. You can add as many additional administrators as you'd like, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. We're in the Your Firm section, and in here you can edit your firm's details, such as phone number and address, and it's also where you can opt into the RCReports referral network. Once you're opted in, you can find your listing, and here we'll see Miller & Associates. Because Miller & Associates is a premium subscriber, they have the option of adding some additional detail and their logo. And you can opt in and out of the referral network at any time. Account history is a listing of all reports that have been initiated by user and client. This comes in helpful for billing. System users will list all the users of the Miller & Associates account. And adding a new user is simple. First name, last name, and email address is all that's required, and then set the user's permissions. Let's take a look at permissions using Karen Green, who we met a little bit earlier. By default, all users are able to log into their account. If you need to lock a user out, you can change this permission here. Share clients. Will Karen's clients be visible to other users? Access shared clients. Will Karen be able to see other users' clients? And would we like Karen to act as an alternate administrator? We currently have all these permissions set to no. Let's pull up Karen's account and take a look at it. You'll notice that there's no Administration tab and no Subscription tab listed here on the left because Karen is not an additional administrator. And in the Clients tab, you'll notice she does not have access to other users' clients. Let's edit Karen's permissions. We'll give her permission to share her clients and access other users' clients and act as an alternate administrator. Once we've updated her profile, the next time Karen logs in, her profile will include the Administration tab and the Subscription tab, and under Clients, she now has permission to view other users' clients. The next feature is reassigning clients, and in here you can shuffle clients among all the users of the account. In this scenario, Karen Green is new to RCReports and she's replacing Tom McGuire. So we're going to assign all of Tom's clients to Karen. We'll select Karen. We'll scroll down to Tom McGuire. We'll select all of Tom's clients. And we'll reassign them to Karen. Pull Karen's profile back up. And now we'll see all of Tom's former clients in Karen's profile. And the last section is for premium users, and this is where premium users can upload their logo and add some additional details for their firm that will be included in the referral network. Next, let's take a look at the Tools tab. We're in a section called Wage Lookup, and this is where you can quickly look up a wage without having to initiate a report. Let's look up Chief Executive for Boulder, Colorado. I chose Chief Executive Officer for a couple of reasons. First, it's important to take a look at the description that goes along with the title. A lot of small business owners will carry the title of CEO, but it won't match their actual responsibilities. For example, a CEO will plan, direct, and coordinate operational activities at the highest level of management with the help of subordinate executives and staff members. That simply doesn't describe what most small business owners do for their business. A more appropriate choice would probably be general manager or office manager. Second, you'll see the wage levels for Chief Executive Officer for 5 different proficiency ratings. As a subscriber to RCReports, you get access to our proprietary wage database, and it's about 3.5 times larger than anything else you're going to find. I know for a fact if you were to go to a free source of wage data such as the BLS, you won't be able to find these 5 data points for Boulder, Colorado. Next, let's take a look at the resource library. In here, you'll find some very helpful tools. The first is a reasonable compensation issue letter for clients. You can download this letter in Word format, make any edits, and make it your own. But sending this issue letter out to your client helps address a few issues. First, it helps educate your clients on the issue of reasonable compensation and encourages them to research and document their reasonable compensation. And second, it will give you some cover down the road. If your client's reasonable compensation figure is challenged, you'll be able to pull this letter out of your file and at least demonstrate that you brought the subject up with them. It may even give you some additional cover with an IRS examiner if they start talking about preparer penalties. Next is an engagement letter you can also download and customize. And third is our paper interview. It has the same questions that are included on our online interview and has become a very popular feature with trusted advisors. It turns out talking with your clients about reasonable compensation, and thus all the hats they wear for their business, is a natural conversation starter. Our users discovered that the interview process built rapport, credibility, and trust, and as a result, practices that have adopted this approach have reported back to us that 9 out of 10 reasonable compensation interviews yield at least one new engagement opportunity or service. The simple conversation starter leads to opportunities to provide your clients with services they didn't know existed, needed, or that you provided. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes. Also in the resource library is a one-stop shop for everything related to reasonable compensation for small businesses and S-Corps, including the most relevant court cases, the IRS job aid, fact sheet and guidelines from the IRS, etc. You can come in here and find them all in one convenient location. Last is continuing education. RCReports is dedicated to educating on the topic of reasonable compensation, and as an RCReports user, you can take any of our classes at no charge. Next, let's take a look at the My Profile tab. We took a look at this tab a little earlier when we created an account. It's where you can come in and change your password. You can also edit your email address. You can set your preference. Would you like other users of your account to view your clients? You can also set your default preference if you'd like your clients to see the report results at the end of the online interview, and this option can be overridden on a report-by-report basis. Next is the Help tab. In here you'll find videos, additional support, frequently asked questions, the icon guide, and a copy of terms and conditions. But most importantly, I want to point out our support widget. In here, you can link to our knowledge base. Our knowledge base includes information by keyword or by category. If you can't find what you're looking for, please contact us. Last is the subscription tab, and it will show your account status. If you're a pay-as-you-go user, this is where you can subscribe. And if you're a current subscriber, this is where you'll renew. Next, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about RCReports methodology. And RCReports uses a methodology recognized by the IRS, known as the replacement cost approach and sometimes referred to as the many hats approach. As a small business owner, if I had to replace myself within my company for all the services I currently provide, what would that cost me? And that's the basis of the replacement cost approach. It takes into consideration all the tasks a business owner provides to their company, such as administration, accounting, marketing, purchasing, etc., And the cost approach breaks the time spent by the owners down into various tasks performed. Wage levels are assigned for each task based on the owner's proficiency, and then they're added back together to obtain a hypothetical replacement cost for the owner. You can recognize the replacement cost being used when you see multiple tasks being referred to, local wage data being used. One of the theories behind the replacement cost approach is that small businesses hire from their community, and when you see hourly rates used and then multiplied out. The replacement cost approach works best for small businesses. So what is a small business? Well, that depends on who you ask. But in general, a business is considered small if it has under 10 million in assets, and that's an IRS definition. Under 7.5 million in revenue, or under 250 employees, and that's Small Business Administration definition. Next, let's talk a little bit about getting started with RC reports, and one of the best places to get started is with the issue letter. Sending the issue letter out to your clients helps educate them on the issue, and it encourages them to research and document their reasonable compensation figure. Add it to your engagement letter. If your clients decide not to take your advice, it'll give you some cover should a reasonable compensation challenge come your way, and the IRS examiner starts to talk about preparer penalties. Next is the paper questionnaire, and I mentioned a little earlier that savvy advisors have begun using the paper questionnaire as their primary method of gathering information from their clients. They found that talking with their clients about reasonable compensation, and thus all the hats they wear for their business, is a natural conversation starter. And if you're a little bit of an introvert like me and some of your colleagues, this is very helpful. Once the conversation has begun, professional instincts and training take over and the trusted advisor relationship takes shape. Advisors tell us there's no need to sell anything. Clients usually ask questions that lead to a natural discussion of ways your firm can genuinely help their business. A few of the more popular topics are retirement and succession planning, becoming their virtual CFO. Entity selection is another very popular topic. Also included is estate planning, and then offering payroll and bookkeeping services. Also begin by saving a client some money. Those of you that have businesses that are Schedule C filers that might benefit from changing entity type, run a reasonable compensation report, and that'll give you the ability to demonstrate to them how switching entity type could result in a tax savings. Next, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about RC Reports pricing. Without knowing RC Reports pricing, it doesn't make sense to talk about billing and pricing strategies for your clients. First and foremost, there's no cost or commitment to open or maintain an account with RC Reports. All new accounts start out on our pay-as-you-go platform, also known as our starter plan. You get access to our resource library and free tools, and you can run reports on an as-needed basis for $199 each. From here, you can upgrade to one of our annual subscriptions. Our basic plan is $549 for a year. It includes unlimited clients, reports, and 2 seats. And our premium subscription is $1,049 per year. Again, unlimited clients, reports, it includes 3 seats, and all the features and benefits you saw in today's webinar. RC Reports comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If for any reason you're not satisfied, contact us. If we can't make it right, we'll refund your money. As a thank you for joining us for today's demonstration, we'd like to offer you a premium subscription for the same price as a basic subscription. In other words, a $500 savings. When you're subscribing to RC Reports, plug in the promotional code LAVENDER when subscribing, and you'll receive a premium subscription for the same price as basic. The values of RC Reports comes from its founders, and we strongly believe that companies shouldn't offer their best deals only to new clients. If you're a current RC Reports basic subscriber, contact us and we will upgrade your account to premium, no questions asked. All you need to do is call us or email us. You can't use the Lavender code, there's no place in your dashboard to enter it. We also believe that companies shouldn't do a bait and switch. They shouldn't offer a low introductory rate and then 6 months or a year from now, double the fee. When you subscribe using the promotional code LAVENDER, all your renewals will be at the same low rate. And last, I'd like to talk with you a little bit more about pricing and billing strategies for your clients. About 3/4 of our users report back to us that they add a small technology fee to their small business clients' tax packages to help cover the annual expense of RC Reports. Larger companies tend to build it into their overhead, and others will simply increase the tax package fee to include a reasonable compensation report. The overwhelming majority of our users prefer value billing. On the low end, they're charging their clients in the neighborhood of $250 per report. On the high end, around $500 per report. Those of you who are familiar with the Bradford Tax Institute, they are charging $795 per report. Some practitioners are still charging a flat fee plus their time, and some will give it away for free or close to it, using it for practice development or when they're bringing in a new client. Others will use it to protect themselves. If they feel they have a client that is particularly at risk, they'll offer to that client at no charge to help protect their client, and more importantly, to help protect themselves from an IRS preparer penalty. Thank you for joining us for our demonstration of RC Reports. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact us.